Hello, jewelry lover. My name is Bella Naiman, and I'm the founder of New York City Jewelry Week. Welcome to this virtual program that's part of NYCJW 24. Our theme for the 7th annual New York City Jewelry Week is Wonder and Wander. This theme reflects the multifaceted nature of jewelry as both art and personal expression. Wander captures the awe-inspiring craftsmanship behind each piece, the dazzling, delicate, and or bold details that turn your head in admiration. Wander invites you to explore the wonderful and wild creative journeys behind the jewelry. It's not just about the finished piece, it's about the adventure it took to get there. Designers experiment, push boundaries, and play with ideas and materials. And this year, New York City Jewelry participants get to see it all unfold. Every necklace, ring, and bracelet is a passport to a new world where innovation reigns and imagination knows no limits. We hope that these programs take you on that journey, and we're very thankful to eBay for being our sponsor and presenting these programs to you. So sit back and enjoy. And we know this program is now live, but you're more than welcome to get in touch with us. Send us an email, a DM, or say hello on the streets, which is where we do hope to see you next time. Thanks so much. Bye.
Welcome to the NYC Jewelry Week virtual events programme. My name is Kate Youde and I'm a journalist based in the UK writing about jewelry for publications including the Financial Times. The theme of this year's festival is Wonder and Wander, which is relevant to the discussion I'm hosting today about the enduring charm of charms. For millennia, people across the globe have worn these miniature pieces of jewelry, whether for protection, good luck, or a symbol of love. We'll be discussing the history of charms, their appeal, the stories they tell, and why contemporary designers continue to be inspired to create these small ornaments. I have the pleasure of being joined by three wonderful guests who are very knowledgeable on this topic. Firstly, Carol Woolton, who is a jewelry historian, editor, author, and stylist, and was jewelry editor at British Vogue for 20 years. She hosts the podcast If Jewels Could Talk and has just written a book with the same name about the 7 pieces of jewelry that connect us across the world. One of these is charms. My second guest is Annoushka Ducas, the British jewelry designer who founded the brand Annoushka in 2009 and is often called the Queen of Charms. She has collected vintage charms since she was a child and now designs contemporary pieces crafted in 18-karat gold. Her playful charm designs encompass everything from a lobster to a ladybird, a cable car to a cowboy boot. And my final guest is Caroline Morrissey, who is director and head of jewelry at the Bonhams auction house in New York. Her areas of expertise include diamonds, colored gemstones, and 20th century jewelry. As an auctioneer, she's overseen the sale of many charms and charm bracelets. Thank you all for joining me today. Carol, in your book, you trace the history of charms from scarab beetles of ancient Egypt onward. Could you give us sort of a brief history of charms and what similarities you found between different cultures and across the centuries in people's approach to charms?
Well, I think they started a lot earlier than the Egyptians, actually. When you think of it, the beads in the British Museum that are 100,000 years old, that they are little shells that have been drilled. So we know that they were drilled to use in some way on the body. Now, I mean, what reason would they have to put these little shells on their body, but as some sort of talismanic protection? I think that, beads have served as amulets and protection since the beginning. But they also, a bit later on, they're animal teeth, bone charms that have been found. Again, extremely old, 28,000 BCE. And I think that really these animal parts were taken on and worn to somehow absorb the courage or the strength of these particular animals. And, also it's always taken on some role of trying to protect from fear of the unknown. And you can imagine for early man, practically everything would have been incredibly frightening. And I'm sure we'll talk about that later, but nothing really changes. Our fear of ills now isn't maybe life-threatening, but it could be too many emails. And we have exactly the same fight or flight response to these things that we now perceive to be life-threatening, which obviously aren't. I think the ancient Egyptians also based a lot of their charms on animals. The scarab, we all know, that was so significant in their culture. Considered one of the most powerful amulets. It was about rebirth and particularly important to help them get to the afterlife. So they had charms of birds, tigers, jackals, antelopes, different animals. Greeks and Romans relied on charms, and Romans, particularly for their children, they had willow pendants, like golden bubbles, really. You can imagine how vulnerable children were during Roman times, and they used to hang these golden charms on them to try and keep them safe and protected. Amber, Pliny talked about the positive effects of amber for children. By the Renaissance, sometimes charms are taken on a more devotional meaning, a lot of crosses, also slightly more to identify their family background, ancestry, lineage, that type of thing. So I think sort of through the centuries, charms are just as important for us all, but maybe they're subject to fashion in a way, and that maybe we use them in a slightly different way within each century. I think, in the 18th century, women started wearing chatelaines, little pockets with the keys in important things that were essential for the household, which began as little thimbles, magnifying glasses, little notepads with pencils. And then indeed, charms could be added to that, which slightly showed their hobbies, religion, marital status, again, which is sort of maybe the start of the modern incarnation of how we use charms to identify our lives and to talk about ourselves.
Annoushka, obviously you've collected vintage charms for many years. What is it about them that fascinates you?
I think it's all about stories. I mean, I think in human nature, we are kind of preconditioned really to tell our stories, and it's a way of sharing experiences. It's a way of showing your feelings. There are so many. You just look at those charms on the screen. So many of them just all about stories, and they're all very different, and there's no theme about it, but each one means something to me for whatever reason. And I think it allows us to connect with each other, to kind of open a conversation. It's just such a lovely way to express a memory or a feeling or an emotion. So I think that's what I've loved about them.
And Caroline, is Annoushka got sort of company in this? Do you find that there's quite a market for charms at auction? Are there quite a few people that collect them?
Annoushka's definitely not alone in this feeling. I think charms, tug at people's hearts across the world in very many different ways throughout the generations. And, we discuss how personal they are to the collector, but it's very interesting to see how other people love to collect other people's charms. So there's stories that tell the charms will tell a personal story, but those charms are also appealing to other people for those stories that are told. They don't necessarily need to be personal to that person, but they're still interesting and collected and very desirable. Yeah.
And is there a particular time period that's particularly popular with people, or?
So, we discussed this, that the 1920s, 1930s Art Deco period was such a huge period for jewelry, and still is today. And here on the screen, you can see an example of a charm bracelet from the Deco period. This one is dated 1920. It's designed by Van Cleef & Arpels, and really, you stylistically, it's very simple, yet every attention to detail is there. And if I had to say a time period for charms from a commercial point of view, it would be this one. How do these charms not appeal to you would be my question.
And Carol, how were charms reflective of the different times in which they were worn?
Well, I think that it showed maybe people getting slightly more sophisticated, maybe our early thoughts about protection evolved into wishful thinking, you know, imbuing something into these tiny little objects that we really hoped or wanted. I love the French word, porte bonheur. It's like carrying good luck with you to make sure you have it with you. So, you know, all the sort of four-leaf clovers and things like that. And when you think very early on, plants had a very important role in a curative power. They were our medicine. So it's not surprising that a lot of plant life and botanical foliage is represented on charms, because that would have been like carrying something that would be curative and protective. So I think it just is different times that what's important. I thought it was quite funny when I was researching the book that a very early gift that King Henry VIII, Tudor king, gave Anne Boleyn, his then love, who he wanted to marry. He gave her a little pistol with a snake wrapped around. Snake, who knows eternity, so he obviously was already hopeful that this relationship would land in marriage. But within it was a little kind of toothpick and a little spoon to clear out earwax. So I think that, the ultimate sort of functional charm. But I think,
very romantic.
Very romantic. And then, the micro-mosaic charms that were carried back, as souvenirs on grand tours that might have, they would be like us now going to Paris and buying an Eiffel Tower. But then they would be sort of exquisitely made with little glass tiles and maybe a vista of the Grand Canal or St. Peter's Square in Rome or something like that. So they kind of acted like we use charms as sort of memories and sort of scrapbooks of our life, and pulling together all these things that we want to remember.
Annoushka, what do you look for in a charm to add to your collection?
Well, I think that speaks to exactly what Carol just said. It is about that, isn't it? Even if you look at some of those charms, those vintage ones that I've collected, they were all about, there was a little Reva on there. I remember it was my, I didn't buy it then, but it's one that reminds me of my very first trip to Venice. It is that. It is absolutely a kind of narrative about your life. I mean, I a bit like Carol, I have a podcast called My Life in 7 Charms. So if I said to any of you, what does your life look like in 7 charms? And you'll start to think about the memories of what it might mean. And then you start to create a charm around what that is. But that narrative itself, will live for generations. And if you make it in 18 karat gold, we know that it'll be there in hundreds of years to come, and the narrative will always be kind of accompany that charm. So for me, it is absolutely about that. But hopefully in my case, imbuing perhaps a little bit of humor. I mean, for example, if you put that Submarine up, for example, I don't expect my mother was expecting to see have a picture of herself on the screen, but I made that charm for myself because my very first memory was dancing to Yellow Submarine with my mother. and that charm is yellow diamonds, it's a locket, the propeller spins, there's a little diamond in the periscope. So for me, it's all about the attention to detail and the perfection that one can create in something so miniature that you can afford to do when you're making it in gold and stones. So I think it is all about the memory, the stories, and the emotion how they speak to you, or indeed, to your point, Caroline, even if it's a charm that you bought that wasn't made for you, it probably says something, probably speaks to you in some way.
Absolutely.
It's unlikely.
Is that what you find with?
Sorry,
Annoushka. I was just going to say, Caroline, is that what you find with collectors? Are there particular motifs that people go for, or why are they choosing certain pieces?
Well, I mean, I think, in every situation, people collect for different reasons. I think people find inspiration in charms, and much to what Annoushka has said, different things appeal to different people for different reasons. But sometimes, when you see somebody else's charm bracelet, that can talk a different language to you. Maybe it's showing you something you didn't know you wanted. Maybe it's somebody else has collected a charm that very obviously states an experience, and somebody thinks, oh, I could do something similar for X, that's personal to them. Maybe in some cases they only want one charm. In order to get to that charm, they have to buy the bracelet and the other 15 charms. So I think, when people are collecting charms and not having the charm made specifically for them, it's, they're buying, there's other reasons that come in. They're looking for inspiration. They're not quite sure what their next charm is going to be, just that they want another charm, and they can take inspiration from somebody else's collection.
Annoushka, why do you think contemporary designers like yourself keep returning to charms?
I mean, a bit like I said at the beginning, I just think it's so much about the stories and this absolute need to kind of connect with people. There's this really deep rooted kind of need to tell the story, to commemorate something that will be around for generations. It's not just, of course, there are charms that are, not precious, but in our case, I think we're all talking about precious pieces that will stand the test of time and be there for generations to come. I mean, I think that's what it is. I think that's what people really, really love.
Carol, how do the contemporary charm designs that we see compare to the ones that you came across when you were researching the history of charms?
Well, I think anything can be a charm. I think anything you want and pick up can function as a charm. Indeed, talking about those early beads, I also wrote about an amazing story about hope and determination of someone who went through the war. She did several death marches and survived. She had a tiny little inexpensive orange bead on her uniform, and that reminded her of who she was before the war, and that she was a dressmaker, and that she had a life that one day she would go back. And I think she did survive. And I think, who knows, that the sort of carrying that reminder may have given her huge strength and hope. But I think what we haven't really mentioned yet is our superstitious natures, because I think that we have really in common with our ancestors, is that we are very, very superstitious. And I think people still are. And, I'd argue actually maybe even more superstitious now. They have very few things to hold on to and believe in. And so I think, charms are that thing that we like to hold on to our sentiments, hold on to that thing that will protect us from our superstitions. And I think, all the, and Annoushka probably has to make them all the time, St. Christopher's for people who don't like traveling and are scared of flying, or, Chanel, Coco Chanel, who was famously superstitious. Her whole apartment was a lucky number 5. Her sign was Leo, so lions, lucky camellia flowers. I think she had charms in all those, and sort of carried it because people are superstitious and want to keep it with them. Just
to that point, I have a collection called Touch Wood, which speaks absolutely to what Carol's talking about. And they are, some of them are wooden charms, other things are pieces of jewelry that have a piece of hidden wood at the back. So actually it's all about what it means to me, the wearer, as opposed to you, the viewer. You see what I mean? And it's amazing how that's resonated with across all cultures, whether it's touche bois, whether it's all the different cultures across the world. There is absolutely something that touch wood speaks to. I just think that's a kind of good example of what you're talking about.
Yeah, and there was a lovely example in the book, Carol, that I love too. It was about Marlene Dietrich, and basically she seemed to cover all bases.
Well, I think a lot of people do. I mean, actually, Dolce & Gabbana, very superstitious, and they go back to this Italian history of what brought good luck was going to help people to prevent ill fortune coming their way. And in Neapolitans, it's coral, like sort of chili peppers in coral, and these little figures of hunchbacks that became very good luck in southern Italy to touch the hump of a hunchback. And they recreate these as sort of little figures of men, combine the chili pepper, have a jeweled 4-leaf clover hanging off one of the arms, and a cross, and a Madonna. It's like they sort of have absolutely everything, just in case that nothing could possibly get past all these charms that are worn together.
Yeah. And I think in Marlena's case, she was using it for a fear of flying, and she had a rabbit's foot and a St. Christopher's and all kinds of different things. Yeah.
And I think, Annoushka, when you talk about touch wood, I think I noticed that sort of on flights, when you see people who, if the turbulence starts, and you see them sort of grabbing something around their neck and sort of slightly holding on for dear life. And I think that's absolutely what people do.
Does that mean that perhaps the design in some ways is not irrelevant, but less important, because in some ways it's about what the charm represents to people rather than what it actually is? Do you think that's fair, Annoushka? Or?
I think that can depend on who you are. I think sometimes it's about the design because it's capturing the narrative or the memory. I recently made a little dolphin for a friend of mine whose son nearly died in a rip in the sea in Australia, and his friend was watching him, and this dolphin out of nowhere came and pushed him to shore. I mean, it's just she told me that story and I had goosebumps, and actually the dolphin will always be with them. It just depends, but a wooden charm might not be about the aesthetic, it might just be about the comfort factor instead of touching your head.
I think people love little trinkets to fiddle with, like your submarine, the moving part, and I think people love collecting. They're like little toys, really, and if they're in miniature of something they imagine that was monumental, and to see it in miniature and have little moving parts, I think that's kind of magical, actually.
I was just going to say, anything that is articulated, I think people are naturally drawn to because it is so very tactile, and so much of the jewelry that we appreciate is about how it feels when it's on, how it feels when you touch it, the craftsmanship. And there's a whole collection of charms that have that as well. They have the movement, and it's very endearing.
I was going to ask you about it, because a lot of your charms are really intricate and they have moving parts, and what are some of the challenges you've had to overcome in making those kind of pieces?
I think that's the joy. I mean, obviously in my past life at Links of London, I made everything in silver, so you don't necessarily have the time and the ability from the craftsman to spend the time doing it. But in 18-karat gold and stones, you could really, if you perhaps look at that crown I think I sent you, that's an as close a replica as we could get to commemorate the coronation. And you can see it's hinged, it's got, it's as perfect as it can be. It opens, it's just beautifully crafted. So, and the little, all of the stones are replicated of that. And then I've done, the fish, which I did, which I'm wearing, but, it's totally articulated. And, you flick through the mushroom, but the mushroom, for example, actually, if you go back to that, the stem turns, the wood is ebony and it's carved wood. That's, again, it's all about touching wood. Anyway, it's called a magic mushroom because it spins, and it's, is a reference to Alice in Wonderland, I guess. But to the point about articulation and movement, if it should and can, I really love that, because it becomes a bit of a worry. Just like you said, Carol, it's a kind of worry thing, like worry beads.
And how much does your collecting of vintage charms influence your contemporary design?
I mean, not specifically. I think, occasionally I'll find something that I want to kind of reinvent and put my spin on it, but I'm not looking, I don't collect charms because I'm trying to get inspiration for new pieces. I really collect them because I'm a bit of a hoarder. But I'm not, it's not like art where I'm collecting them for that reason. I'm collecting because they speak to me for some reason, whether it's the dice or the rowing boat or the tank for, what do you call that, deep diving, what do you call, can't remember the name. That's it. So for me, it's about it might be because of the detail, or because it actually moves, or it might be because it reminds me of something. There are a host of different reasons, or just because I like it.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's the best reason, right?
Yeah.
What's the most memorable charm you sold at auction, Caroline?
So if you're going to bring my slide up, yes, it's this charm bracelet. And what this picture does not convey is the size of each charm. And, now, obviously, I don't know anything about the original owner who collected these charms, other than this was a bracelet that she apparently wore regularly. Although I will tell you, I find that quite challenging because these charms are so huge. Sort of, what do you do with your wrist when you are wearing such a charm bracelet with these enormous charms? But this is memorable for me because every single person who saw a picture of it or saw it, on view, couldn't take their eyes off of it. They were drawn to it for some reason. And it's interesting, especially, on top of everything that's been said. So people are drawn to it for what reason? They don't know the owner. What do these charms mean? And, and maybe, as you just said, Annoushka, they're just drawn to it for no reason other than, it was quite a tactile bracelet because the charms were so huge. But we had some ferocious bidding on this bracelet in a live sale, the likes of which I've never seen in a charm bracelet before. And it was magnificent. And how much did it go for in the end? I can tell you the exact price. It sold for just over $30,000. Mm-hmm. And a lot of gold in there, but not that much. So it sold for the charms and for what it was, not so much of what it was made out of.
Presumably, it was in the age of not having to type so much and do all that stuff on the computer.
Yes.
That's a good point, Annoushka. I wanted to know from you, because people have always had sort of charm bracelets, but now, as you say, with everyone typing all the time and it's kind of clanky around, do you find people are getting more charms now to wear singly as opposed to on bracelets?
Absolutely. I don't know. We always really struggle with this online, is do we call it a charm or do we call it a pendant? All of these are charms, but they all have an opening veil, so they all come off so that you can wear them individually or around your neck, or so you can choose, because I think life's moved on a bit since the 30 charm bracelet. I think
Can you imagine Elizabeth Taylor
for occasion? I think
Imagine Elizabeth Taylor trying to type. She had those she had 2 or 3 absolutely laden with charms, didn't she? Every aspect of her life.
Yeah.
I don't think, in between movies, she was doing much typing.
I think
When you were researching, Carol, did you find that charms were historically worn as a bracelet or a pendant? Or?
No, a pendant.
A pendant?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just to have, yes, probably on sort of something rather simple, or just on the clothes, maybe even pinned. But,
and obviously, Annoushka's charms are sort of 18 karat gold, and therefore the price reflects that. But at auction, Caroline, there seem to be pieces going for hundreds, as well as thousands of dollars, like we discussed. But it seems quite an accessible area, perhaps. Does that mean that perhaps it's an area of collecting that attracts a slightly younger demographic, perhaps because it's more accessible?
Yes, I think, charms, many people, I should say, have some type of exposure at home to charms, whether it's a grandmother or an aunt or, a friend of a friend. And, today I think people are so excited by charms, and like you say, they are accessible. There are nice ones, there are nicer ones, but you can buy a charm bracelet for sort of the price of gold. And if you consider all of the creativity, the design, and the labor that goes into making all of these individual charms, that's quite astonishing. But it does also make it very accessible, as you say. So I can't tell you how many young people buy charms these days, but I can tell you that I think they are loved, from the young through to the old. And by them being more accessible doesn't necessarily draw younger people in, but maybe younger and groups of people for whom, when you have extra zeros on, they may be less attainable for them. So it sort of almost brings everyone together at different price points through their love of what the charm is, less so about what they can actually afford.
And have you found that the popularity of charms among contemporary jewellers has had a knock-on effect into the secondary market?
Less so. I think it takes a long time for somebody to say goodbye to their charms. And in most cases, I think you will find it is somebody who has inherited a charm bracelet or a set of charms that then decides to sell them, versus the person who collected them themselves, because it's so personal. I think there's character in both the old and the new, and you have to go down the line of collecting that is appealing to you as an individual. But I also think it helps that charms, when I look at the type of charms that we see on the secondary market, they're almost exclusively in yellow gold. Obviously there's that Van Cleef one in white gold, slightly different category. But now that yellow gold is so much in vogue, it's easier for older charms to fit into that, because it's the direction everyone's going in at the moment anyway.
Yeah, obviously we've spoken a lot about the sheer variety of charms, but Annoushka, are there particular motifs that you find are bestsellers for you that people are particularly interested in?
I think, I would imagine that everybody would agree that I think hearts are, you know, we actually don't do very many hearts, ridiculously, but certainly at Links in London, couldn't keep hearts in stock. You know, I'm sure Tiffany will have the same situation, but I think there isn't a particular charm that you sell over and over, because each, as I say, each one speaks to somebody in a different way. It really does. That's why we have such a big collection, because each one is a different thing for each person.
What's the most unusual charm you've designed?
Oh God.
I think you could talk about your husband's one.
Oh yeah, my husband. You're right.
Yes.
When I say you're absolute, thanks, Carol. When I said to my husband I was going to represent him in my life in 7 charms as a gold rock, because he has been my rock throughout. Typical man. He said, I don't want to be a bloody gold rock. So I said, what do you want to be? He said, I want to be sex on legs. Oh, there he is.
Oh, I love this.
So it's under the legs all move and the feet move, and you know they kind of, you know, it is articulated anyway. So thanks, Carol. You're right. That's an unusual charm.
Young people, it's the evil eye. I notice the evil eye everywhere, and you know, the ankh. I mean, these sort of quasi, and also the cross. I think the cross, it's gone beyond a sort of religious symbolism into a sort of a universal symbol of feeling calm and peace. And actually, I was thinking the other day that in the state of the world we live at the moment, we need a new charm. We need that 70s peace sign to come back, something like that. I think we all need to wear that right now.
You mentioned in your book that you thought that the kind of interpretation of the evil eye has changed in the way it's used. Can you expand on that a bit?
Well, I think it's sort of pretty much the same. I just think it's become a sort of a simpler eye. It can be almost a feminine eye, you know, and also I think it can really, as we were talking about the different sort of price ranges for different age groups, the evil eye can fit really well into all of that, because you can get it made with blue diamonds and you can have it made with blue crystal. Doesn't matter. But I do notice that with young people, it is that sort of symbolism of keep me safe, keep me against all these threats that are coming at me, like climate change and war and
I should have said, yeah, you're absolutely right. Evil eye, absolutely a constant, whether or not, you know, we've done one with little pearl tears. That's, you know, we did for Vampire's Wife. It is absolutely constant throughout. But you're so right.
Do anybody have smiley faces anymore?
We sell a lot of those. We really do. Lots of smiley faces, particularly, you know, it's just diamonds on one side, and on the other side it's plain, has a slightly different emoji kind of face on it. But I think these are just things that make you feel good. The smiley faces just make you feel smiley, don't they?
Yeah. And Caroline, because, you know, charms seem obviously very personal to people, does that change the way people collect, because they're kind of, they mean more than perhaps some other types of jewelry?
No, I think charms are sort of in their own category, in that they tell, because we have the story that they're telling, or they're used as an amulet, you know, for perhaps difficult situations, that, you know, you're not going to choose necessarily a charm over another piece of jewelry, because they're for two different reasons. Or, you know, you might like jewelry but collect charms, and you might hold off on a charm until you find the right one to tell your own story, you know, that is the right design and evoke the feelings that you're looking for in that charm. So I would put them in different categories. People who come to me and talk to me about, you know, certain charm bracelets we may have in a sale, in purchasing their charm bracelet or is not going to stop them from another jewelry purchase. It's simply satisfying something for that particular niche, and they'll carry on doing whatever else they will with jewelry separately.
What tips would you give to someone that was perhaps looking to start a charm collection?
So I'm going to make it personal. You know, what is your goal of your charm bracelet? Is it to tell a story that you already know, right? So we go back to the telling your sort of your 7 most important charms. In that respect, you're going to plan out what your charms are and wait perhaps for the exact ones that tick the box. I think there's another type of collecting where it's a bit more spontaneous and people can fall in love with a charm, or they see something and it suddenly speaks to them, but it's not planned in advance. And so my suggestion would be decide what you want from your collection of charms and stick with it. But I'm also somebody who, anyone can make a good plan, but if you fall in love with a piece of jewelry, be it on you to say no, because I don't have that capacity. So I think having a little corner of that to say, oh, go on, that talks to me, is part of the joy of collecting versus being so rigid in advance that you can't be spontaneous.
Yeah. And Carol, we've obviously given quite a few examples of women wearing charms, but did you come across examples of men wearing charms?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, all the sailors in southern Italy wouldn't get on a boat without a piece of coral. You know, there was this sort of symbolism and resonance for them, that because it came from the sea and was red and it was symbolic of Christ's blood, and it became this sort of good luck amulet that they would take with them. I think, you know, when you think of coins too, certain coins that the Romany community would drop, they obviously used it as currency as well. But, you know, maybe kind of keeping things around your body, having that clink, that jostle, that sort of feeling of something heavy on your body, that was something that people liked and got used to, and of course used in times of trouble.
I'm one of my vintage charms that I collected is the thumbs up. You ever come across that?
Yes, I mean a lot of gestures,
Yeah.
You know, the hand of Fatima.
Yeah.
And again in Italy, it is the manu cornuto. You know, it is that sort of gesture, which is meant to be the head of the bull. So again, going back to this idea of animals, that they wanted to have the strength of the bull, and having it made in coral or some other stone that they believed had some protective powers would make it extra strong, very effective for them. Peace sign.
Yeah. And the thumbs up was given to pilots, wasn't it, in the war? So to check they were all right, and their little arms moved up and their thumbs go up like that. It was just such a lovely, and they had a wooden head, so that again it was touching wood, thumbs up, you know, good luck.
And I guess worry beads.
Yeah.
Worry beads take on that slight sort of fiddling something, having it on you around your wrists. Maybe it takes on a sort of idea of a charm. I mean, Caroline, did you ever see, if you like that Art Deco, did you ever see that bracelet? I'm wondering if it was Van Cleef as well. And it was to sort of encapsulate the cocktail era, and it had a little ice pick, a little cocktail shaker, a little olive. Did you see that?
I've seen it. Martini glass. It had all those things. Yeah.
Yes, I think I have. I mean, the Art Deco ones, they have so much creativity and humor in them that I find them completely irresistible.
And I think that's what you try to bring to yours, Annoushka. What tips would you give to people for kind of curating and wearing their charms? Are there any kind of do's and don'ts that you can give to make sure that they look good?
I think there is a bit of an art in that, actually. I think there is an art in making sure that you haven't got everything that's round, particularly if you want to wear it around your neck. You know, you don't want everything that's completely round or three-dimensional. You need to have length, you need to have a bit of femininity, a bit of movement. So I think it is quite an art. You know, I always think, oh no, you just shove it all on it, but actually, you know, I'm quite careful about when I design things, that I have things that are long and other things which are flat and other things that are you know, it is quite an art, actually, in terms of putting it together.
And is that the same for a charm bracelet as well? You need sort of things of different sizes next to each other?
I think so. I personally think so. But, you know, Caroline showed us that gorgeous bracelet that was very much about voluminous and large, you know, tactile things. So I do think the tactile part of jewelry, charms included, is so vital, that it is something, you know, ultimately it's something you touch and hold. It's not something that just is about adornment.
Yeah. And Caroline, is that something you found from collectors?
Oh yes, I mean, when you hand somebody a charm bracelet, somebody else's charm bracelet they know nothing about, but they themselves like charms, you can see a change in someone's entire physique as they hold it, they take it in, they examine the charms. 100%. I mean, I think one of the wonderful things about charms is that you look at them and then you want to look at it again. There's a level of detail that draws you in. Yes, that can be said of other pieces of jewelry, but charms are this, as we've discussed, this miniature representation of something that, you know, is pulling you in for a reason. And to see that attention to detail, to add it to, you know, perhaps your collection, or at least think that that's the direction that you want to go in, you know, how it feels and what it does for you when you're holding it is plays such a huge role in how much you then ultimately want to pursue acquiring it.
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken a bit about how, you know, charms are obviously representative of something for people, but Carol, you had a lovely expression in the book about how charm bracelets are like an identity tag, so a real form of kind of self-expression.
Yeah.
Yes, I think so, because I think, in a way, if you're choosing something very personal, which just expresses something about you, your personality, your life, you are showing that to people. So it does become a bit of your identity. And also, I think, you know, currently how we all dress and how we are, we're very sort of homogenized. We all kind of wear the same things, really. So actually having these little idiosyncratic jewels that say, actually, this is what I do in my spare time, or this is what my zodiac sign is, or this is what my hobby is. It gives that information about who you are, maybe more than the fashion you're wearing or anything else that you have that you put on that day.
Yeah. And obviously you chose charms as one of your 7 pieces of jewelry that link us across the world. Do you see it as something that will continue and be present across cultures for many years to come?
I think even more so, actually, because the world is just so global. As I say, we all dress the same, we all travel, we all, and, you know, the majority of people don't live where they came from. You know, they want to take something that means something to them with them, that reminds them, that's a memory, that, as I say, grounds them in this is who I am. And I think that will be even more important.
Yeah, well, that seems like a good point to wrap up the session. Thank you all so much for your time. It's been such a wonderful discussion and really interesting to hear all your different thoughts on charms. With all the stories they seem to have to tell, it's not perhaps surprising that they continue to be so popular. And I hope everyone watching has enjoyed it too, and that it's perhaps inspired you to create your own charm collection. And please do enjoy the rest of NYC Jewelry Week and tune into more of the talks on offer in the virtual programme.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.